We found that, if you've got 100 buyers, the quantity of buyers didn't increase. They go around different parts of London dependent on what they need a property for, if it's a pied-à-terre or a full-time home or a younger family. So a lot of people that grew up in Knightsbridge, Chelsea, Belgravia, the kids went and moved up in Kensington, Notting Hill. Prices went sky high. And we're finding actually over the last year that people have been coming back because prices are really quite interesting. So weirdly, our Chelsea team have had a fantastic year with, I think, more of the market looking down here for value.
That makes sense. Actually, we have seen it transform. It's lucky that Kings Road has an estate like Cadogan. They have a large proportion of the ownership, 65% of the Kings Road now. So and Sloane Square, they own wholly, and Sloane Street. And you've seen what they've done to Sloane Street. Yeah. So they're able to curate, and then that's where we come in as the partnership, is we bring everyone else in line, and we do it for the whole of the street, essentially, by bringing the other landowners in. But yeah, it has transformed. The market on Saturday, it's incredible.
Incredible.
And then when I was there, we moved it to the running track in the summer. Now you can just make such a difference than it just being in the square. But you're right, the retail has changed, it's evolved. You've got all the new retail coming over from the US, South America, the exciting stuff that's making it a destination. And then the restaurant scene, I think that's probably been the biggest change in the last 18 months. Yeah. I think we run definitely under indexing from a restaurant perspective versus the West End, Covent Garden, and I think we're now getting to where we need to be.
So you were in the West End, and then you went to
So actually, I was a retailer for 14 years, worked for Gap, and I used to run the stores at Oxford Street. So worked in the West End for a good 10 years. Then I worked for New West End Company, which is the largest bid. They represent Oxford Street, Regent Street and Bond Street. Did 4 years there. Then went travelling, joined Cadogan. And while I was there, we were setting up the bids for both Kings Road and Knightsbridge. And actually, Knightsbridge was never planned. Kings Road always was, because that's where Cadogan's interest was. And it was all about uniting the street under one vision. And that's what that was always the aim. Knightsbridge came about through chance, essentially, in the fact that Brompton Road was deteriorating in terms of the type of retail. There was a lot of empty shops. And it was the coming together of the politicians, the residents, the key stakeholders in a meeting saying, we need to do something, otherwise it's going to continue to do this. And there was a view that, the heyday of Harrods and Harvey Nicks they weren't what they were. So it was decided then, well, let's look to see if a bid would work there. And actually it's worked incredibly well, because there isn't one landowner. We have 50 owners in Knightsbridge. Again, it's about us coming in and bringing everyone together under one vision and actually get them to see the importance of Knightsbridge. It was one of two international centres within the London plan, designated probably 10 years ago. And we really started to use that as a reason as to why we should focus on Knightsbridge and make it an important part of the London story, because I think it lost its way. And part of what we're doing now is retelling that story and trying to get what we call the glamour back to Knightsbridge. If you think about the 70s and 80s, it was where everyone was. Mick Jagger falling out of a car, out of the Mandarin, those sort of things.
How many years ago was Kings Road started versus Knightsbridge? Are they quite similar? They're not together, but they're...
No. So the way we run it, we have one company. So there's a company that overarching, and then we have two management boards that run the bid, but it's the same team. So one team that run both areas. So they're both retail, and strategically they have the same issues. Yeah. When you get down to day-to-day, they're slightly different, and you manage them slightly differently. But the big issues like safety, cleansing and all that, they're all the same. And how do you drive footfall? So it was felt it'd be more efficient and productive to have one team than two separate teams running destinations that are very close to each other. And obviously Cadogan then has the overarching, because they've got Sloane Street in the middle, they're involved in both, so it supports that. But we went to ballot in the autumn of 21, We were due to go in March, but with COVID and everything else, we just delayed it. And there was a 2-month gap between them. So Knightsbridge went September, Kings Road went November. And then we go to ballot, because I don't know if you know how bids run. So essentially we bottom up, talk to the members, understand the issues. You write a business plan, and it's a 5-year business plan. And it's like a local election. You go out to the membership, and the membership is designated by the boundary that you implement. Yeah. And every 5 years, you have to go back out to that membership with a new business plan, and they vote you back in. So we've got about 500 members to engage with, which we've been doing. We've been talking to them recently to understand, what the challenges, what the issues, what you're happy with, what you're not happy with. And we're writing the business plan, and we will go out with that plan from May to August, talking to them again, saying, do you support this, essentially? And it will give another, where are we? Probably over the 5-year term across both bids, £20 million worth of investment into the area.
I think there must be a lot of people out there that don't know you're doing this. And
so the industry was set up. It's had its 20th anniversary this year, and it was an industry that started in Canada 50 years ago. They're all over the US, and it was when it was the Labour government. There was a contingent of people who went over to New York to learn about it, and they brought them back, and there was a pilot, and that's where we are today. But we've now got 75 in London, 350 across the UK. And they tend to be in commercial areas in high streets that need private investment to regenerate, or as I said, to redevelop or bring onto one vision when you've got mixed ownership. And that's where they work best. And the great thing about BIDS is you raise the money locally and you spend it locally. It's an all non-for-profit, so everything you raise is designed to be spent in improving, regenerating, or making the space and place much better.
So I suppose the people investing the money are the people who are most being impacted by it, and they see it every day, and it improves the value of certain things they have, whether it's financially or just life. Is there competition amongst different bids? Over the last 5-10 years, we've definitely found it fascinating watching different areas regenerating, spending money, and all of a sudden they pop up to sort of at the top of the tree, and then others sort of compete. And so it's maybe not necessarily competing after one pool of shoppers or hotel goers, but you're actually creating more value and bringing more people to the areas as well.
Yeah, I would say, I think us as a business, less so in competition with other bids, because we are there to service our members. Yeah. We all like to think we're doing better than the others, but it's not direct. But as a destination, definitely we're in competition. And I think all parts of London, it's cyclical, isn't it? Some parts are trendy at some periods. I've lived in East London for the last 20 years, and I've seen that evolve. Shoreditch was the place to be. It's not now. It's moved up to Dalston. It's wherever you are, there's the cool and trendy places. Yeah. And I think Chelsea is having that hip factor again. Knightsbridge, I think, is starting to, because Mayfair's had, it's become a bit bling, let's say, I think, or there's parts of it that is you get a certain clientele where maybe that's not what you want to be. Yeah. So I think now is the time for this part for the area. And I think you talk to it, the residential prices are a bit better here. And I think it all works together. I think when it comes to international, so we're fighting for the Londoner. So I'm always talking to friends like, when was the last time you come west? If they live east, you very rarely do both. Yeah. People that live in Battersea and southwest, they'll come up to the King's Road. It's their location. They've grown up here, so they get it. So we are fighting for that in a respect. But internationally, I think if you're an international visitor, you're either a regular visitor to know where you're going, or you're a one-time visitor that's making a plan. And you'll do the sites, you'll do Buckingham Palace, you'll do all that. And luckily, Harrods is on that list. So Knightsbridge will always get visited if you're an international visitor, because it's part of the London story.
You just need to capture.
Yeah, and it's making that. And I think to a degree Chelsea is now. We're seeing a lot more international spend in Chelsea. I think, if I compare to Knightsbridge international spend is now about 55-60%. So it's more than the domestic. That's how powerful it is for us. On the King's Road, it's about 25, getting up to about 30% now. So very heavily dominated by domestic, local, which is great because they're always there. And I think what I learned from working in the West End is you can rely too much on one. And I think the West End relies a lot on international. And once international, we saw it, COVID and other periods, when that starts to disappear, how do you then chase the domestic? So you need to get that balance right. You can't be too heavy in one way, in one side, I think.
And so this is your business plan. You're analysing and differentiating yourselves to other people. And so Chelsea and Knightsbridge are super close, but very different, I'd imagine.
Absolutely.
And have similar problems and different strengths and weaknesses.
Similar problems. I think they're merging more together. Obviously, you think you've got two very distinct commercial high streets separated by a highly affluent residential district, with then the artery of Sloane Street as another commercial district, joining the two together in a way. So we are starting to see that cross-pollination between the two way more now. And obviously with the upgrade of Sloane Street, that's made that even more appealing to get people from one end to the other, which is great. But very different in the type of customer, but also issues, I think let's talk about the one that probably is one of the biggest issues, more from a perception perspective, but how safe is London at the moment? And a lot of what we do, and one of the main reasons why we were set up is, people felt that shoplifting was an issue. They didn't feel as safe as they used to. So we have a dedicated security team that were out there all the way through the day and in the evening in both areas. And they've become the first response for a lot of things because of, I suppose, the funding and the reality of where the Met is at the moment. So I think that's a common issue with both, but both in different ways. King's Road very much about shoplifting, Knightsbridge around begging and organised crime and various things like that. So, and illegal street trading. So, and we have to deal with all that on a day-to-day basis.
I spoke on a panel a couple of weeks ago, and there was a lot of talk about what London in general looks like for the next 5-10 years. And there was one thing I'm really conscious of is that, for us, we are very London dominated, very, we're in our own little bubble. We're very conscious of the budget and all these little things. And then you speak to an American, they've got no idea we had a budget. That they're much more interested in what's happening in their country. And then the same in the Middle East or the same in Asia, completely different things happening. They've got very different perceptions of London. I think what I heard on that day, there was a lot of talk around perceptions of London. And it's very easy for us to give our perceptions, and we've probably all heard them 1,000 times. But there was an expert there who provides tax advice to Americans moving to the UK and vice versa. And he said there was just incredibly good perception of the UK and London at the moment from an American perspective. And I think, education's still really up there. Safety and security is really up there. There is this perception of London as an unsafe place from Asia and the Middle East. But if you come from the US, when there's the US, schools are safer, the roads are safer. And our politics is a little bit all over the place, but perhaps not as all over the place.
I think we look like a better option at the moment on a lot of different levels, whether certainly if you've got more liberal views than what you're used to in the US. And yes, from a safety perspective, I think it is perception. We don't have what you call a no-go area in London. That doesn't exist really. No. You can mostly walk everywhere. And I put that down to how London's been built over time, is that you can have an area like this, but then you could, because of the war and bombing, you might then have a council estate right next to it. Yeah. And I think we just all work together and operate. What they've done in the US is that you build these massive areas where there's deprivation, and that's what causes that perception. We don't have that to that degree. Right. And I think it's how many villages over time, London has grown, and how it's been because it has been growing for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I think that's been to our benefit more than anything. And actually, we're looking at our Christmas lights for next year, and we're looking at the Victorian era to understand, okay, can we take some of what was about then and build that into the narrative? And we're looking at lanterns, essentially. How can we take some of that? Because the Victorian era was the growth and the heyday of Knightsbridge. That's when the stalls became what they are today. And there's some really nice pictures of, we see it as there's a motorway that runs through at the A4 now. But back in the day, it was two simple roads, and there was like a stepped on the northern side where it's raised. There was just staggered, and that was because on the northern side, when it was first built, they were all houses, and they used to have gardens. So over time, as it became more commercial, the gardens disappeared, and they needed to step down to the road. So, and I'm only finding all this out. And actually, in my pack, we've done a heritage. I'll leave you a copy actually, because I think it'll be really interesting. But it's looking back at how it's evolved and how can we protect that in the work that we want to do for the future.
What do you think the perception of Knightsbridge is now that you're wanting to, and how are you wanting to evolve it? How are you wanting to position it in London?
I think Knightsbridge, if you're a Londoner, I don't think you would choose to come to Knightsbridge because you see it as somewhere where tourists go. And that's what we're battling with. I think similar to what probably Covent Garden, the image Covent Garden had 10 years ago, or even Regent Street 15, 20 years ago before the Crown, turned it into what it is today. So I think we're in this journey of changing that perception, how do we provide moments or places that people that live in London want to enjoy? And I think for us, it's the hotels, but F&B. We've got to have the right F&B offer. And the retail, our competition for Knightsbridge is Regent Street, essentially. Similar size stores, brands, Brompton Road, the Regent Street, the similar sort of feel. And then we've got the two great department stores. And I think Harvey Nichols is going on its own journey at the moment. Julia Goddard, the new CEO, she's got big plans. And she wants that to become the department store for Londoners. People, if you want to go, that should be where you go. Yeah. And I think that's the journey we're going on at the moment. I think, yes, we need our international visitors. They're important to us. They spend a lot of money. But then we also have quite an affluent residential population that have lived there 50 plus years. Yeah. They live in the Montpelliers in the north, and they still have their houses, and they're an important community that we need to, which we do engage with. We need to make sure that there's a Knightsbridge for them as well. Yeah. And it's getting that fine balance, which is difficult. So we're trying to sort all that, but it's a big project. It's a mile long. It's £100 million investment that we want to spend privately and publicly. But it's been a fascinating journey, and I think you see what Cadogan have done on Sloane Street. If we don't do something, Brompton Road is, you talk about competition. We're not just competing with London, we're competing globally. New York, Milan, you talked about people moving to Italy. Dubai, I've just come back from there as an exercise to understand that part of retail and the destination and what competition looks like to us. Because we're in competition. So unless we spend and improve and set its future and make it sustainable, then Knightsbridge won't be what we know it to be today.
You were talking about perception before, and it feels like we, well, again, very London centric, but it feels like our London UK PR machine needs to get going globally, and I'd be fascinated to hear what you've taken from the Middle East in terms of what the competition looks like. We were in New York earlier this year, and it's very interesting to see what the competition does look like. But from safety all the way to shopping and hotels and different accommodation and food, and what have you taken away from coming back from Dubai? Was it just Dubai, or were you?
No, we did Riyadh to Saudi as well, and it was all part of the planned work. So we went as a London delegation with Opportunity London, and Opportunity London's been set up its main aim is to get inward investment into London. So if there's a big project happening, how do you get international investment to help these projects happen? We were out there, and I was going to understand, because I'd never been to the Middle East before, to understand, okay, what does the competition look like? A third of our visitors come from the GCC, so understanding how they live and how it is. And I think the things I took away from was safety. You know, I'd been told you can leave your bags anywhere, no one will do anything, and it was right. But I think part of the big thing I took away is obviously their daytime ends a lot earlier than ours. So a lot of and because of the heat in the summer, they spend a lot of their time in the dark in the evenings, and that's, you know, families are out. So they light their buildings and their public spaces in a very different way to us. They are bright. And immediately you feel safe because there isn't a dark space or, you know, shaded area anywhere. And when we're designing a place like Knightsbridge, that's what I want to think about, is how do we light the space? A lot of what we do now is we light the highway and we forget about everything at a human level. You know, we've got some beautiful buildings, they're lit very well, but it's not consistent. So they do that incredibly well. And that plays into that role of perception of safety. And I think that can help. Yeah. And I think the safety issue, it is perception. You know, I was with a meeting with the commissioner last week and other bids and mobile phone snatches, for example. We've been working with the Met and they're implementing some changes. And we've seen a massive drop in that recently. Right. But unfortunately, with the world of social media, you can have one watch theft or one thing happen and it goes viral and all of a sudden it's not safe. Yeah. And actually the reality is this part of London is probably the most safest part of London you can be in. The crime stats and the reality of what we deal with is far safer than other parts of London. But as a whole, London is a safe city when you compare it to the likes of cities in America or even, you know, some of Europe, Barcelona. So I actually think it is, and we've got, as London, we're working on this, getting that positive message out and have a collective campaign that talks London up. Because I think for far too long, we haven't been doing that, and I think we need to, and counteract some of the negative that's coming out. Because it's an amazing city. I didn't know what to expect with Saudi, and it literally was not what I expected in a way. I think there's been a lot of change over the last 5-6 years in terms of how more westernized it's becoming, less strict in some of its culture and religion, and that's having a big impact on the younger generation. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves and moves forward. Yeah.
It's very interesting. I mean, the concept of having a vision for 2030 as a country, I mean, you're doing really exciting stuff for your 2 districts, but you're needing to raise a lot of money privately. You're needing to sort of probably cajole governments and politicians to get involved. And it sounds like there are lots of other bids doing similar things, but wouldn't it be exciting for us to be doing this all together for the whole country? I mean, London is, obviously we're very biased towards London, but could this be happening in Liverpool and Manchester and all the other cities around?
And I think they are to a degree. I think it comes back to knowledge. I think we're an industry that not many people know about unless you work in the industry. You know, there's even politicians that wouldn't know unless you've got a bid in your area. Again, you don't know. We need to, as an industry, we need to do better to talk about it and talk about the great things that we do. You know, I think it was 250 million a year reinvested into the UK. Wouldn't be there without bids. A lot of money. So, and I think London, yes, we live in this great city, we live in this bubble. There is the Mayor's Growth Plan at the moment, which I think is the first time I've seen something similar to the vision that they have in Saudi, where business and London can get behind something. But I think, unfortunately, in this country, we've now got to a point where we don't necessarily trust our politicians in the fact that they say they're going to do something and we'll experience change. It actually comes through. In Riyadh, it's very clear. They've been on a journey of change since 2015, and they've experienced it and felt it. So they believe in what's being told to them because they've experienced.
And they don't have 5-year changes.
No, they don't. And, there's lots of negativities to what goes on, but the positive side that I took from it is I spoke to this 26-year-old female and I asked about what, her experience, and, she was doing a tour with us, and she said for the first time, when I was 16, this country changed, and now I've got opportunities that I never had before. And that's exciting for someone that's 26 to think that. And they're highly educated over there. And I think we've got to try and grasp some of that and get people excited about the future. But how do you do it? Like, we can do it from a business perspective locally.
Well, it's great what you're doing. And in terms of raising awareness or things that perhaps our community, we work and live in areas that have bids, and actually we're in Kensington. We were sent a letter from the bid asking if we wanted to get involved, but I didn't really know what it was about. And I'm someone that definitely should know about this stuff. So trying to raise awareness, people listening to this, what would be your message?
I would say, if you believe in your the area you live in and you want your high street to survive, then get involved and understand what your bid's doing. A lot of the Christmas lights that you will see in town centres that were up this time of year will be delivered by the bid, not the council. And I think when you say that, people then can think, oh, okay, there's another organisation that's doing, because I think people just assume it's the council.
Yeah.
And it's not. We cleanse the streets more than the council do. We have our own security team. There's so much that we do. And I think find out, most town centres now will have a business improvement district. And I think that they will be running the Instagram channels for that town. They'll be doing all of the marketing. That will be a small, tiny team. We've got bids that generate as little as 50,000 a year. There's one person. There's one in Ealing. And he's basically just bringing the community together, creating opportunities for networking and doing a newsletter. But that's what they want and what they need. And you've got varying different scales of bids up and down the country. We're a team of 10, 6 full-time, and we outsource. And then you've got the big ones in the West End that have teams of 20 because they raise vast amounts of money. So, and we're all here to make the destinations the best they can be. So if your town doesn't have a bid, then there's an opportunity. Because I think we can do a lot of good, essentially. But yeah, we'd love the general public to know more about what we do and that we exist.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll let you get back to work.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. That was great.
That was fun.